Hi everyone, I hope you're feeling comfortable where you are, and I'm genuinely curious. Where are you listening from right now and what time is it? It's always fascinating to think about how someone halfway across the world might be settling in for sleep, while we explore the distant past together. Have you ever wondered how people in ancient Greece slept, rested, and spent the quiet hours of their days? Well, today we're going to wander through the streets and homes of Athens, Corinth, and even some of the smaller villages, tracing the rhythms of daily life, the subtle rituals of relaxation, and the peculiar habits that governed rest in a world without the convenience of modern comforts. Imagine the early morning sunlight spilling gently through the small windows of a modest house, the scent of olive oil lingering in the air, mingling with the faint aroma of freshly baked bread from a nearby oven, while outside, the city slowly awakens with a chorus of footsteps, the chatter of merchants arranging their stalls, and the soft bleating of goats tethered just beyond the walls. In these first quiet hours, the Greeks already practiced forms of what we might recognize as personal care, though very different from our own routines, from washing in cool water drawn from clay jars to anointing their skin with fragrant oils, which served not only for cleanliness but also for a subtle sense of calm and refreshment, almost like a gentle promise of the day to come. Families stirred within their homes, parents exchanging hushed greetings, children stretching with sleepy movements, and servants quietly preparing light breakfasts of bread, olives, and perhaps a small portion of cheese or figs, depending on the household's wealth and location. Even in these ordinary moments, the structure of rest and awakening was carefully intertwined with social expectations. A father might rise early to visit the agora, while his wife lingered just long enough to ensure her children were awake and occupied, and the servants, well accustomed to these rhythms, moved almost invisibly through the rooms, their presence marked only by the faintest creaks of wooden floors or the soft clink of pottery. And yet, despite the apparent simplicity, there were subtle intricacies, like the ways in which people stretched their limbs, massaged their shoulders with small tools or oils, or lingered at the windows to watch the city slowly ignite with activity. A quiet prelude to the conversations, debates, and daily labors that would dominate the sunlit hours. You might imagine, for a moment, the soft conversations of women preparing their hair with delicate combs, exchanging advice on which herbs to use for fragrance or which oils helped maintain supple skin, while nearby, the children's laughter punctuated the air as they discovered tiny delights. A stray cat slipping through the doorway, or the discovery of a dropped fig from the breakfast table, all unfolding against the backdrop of a city slowly stirring awake. Even within these early moments, the distinctions between wealth and modesty were apparent. From the smoothness of the bedding to the subtle decorations on a wall, the presence of a painted vase or a carved figurine, each contributing not just to comfort but to a sense of well-being. A silent attention to beauty that quietly influenced the spirit before the day had truly begun. And as the sun rose higher, casting long shadows across stone streets and the steps of temples, the anticipation of activity, of labor, and of interaction hovered lightly in the air, tempered by these gentle rituals of waking, these almost meditative beginnings that framed the rest of the day, hinting at the moments of rest and leisure to come, moments that the Greeks, in their own way, cherished as much as their work or conversation. Understanding that life was as much about the quiet, reflective pauses as it was about the visible accomplishments. So, as you settle in, listening now, consider the soft rustle of linen, the subtle scent of oil, the distant echo of footsteps on stone streets, and imagine yourself quietly walking alongside an Athenian family through the morning light, learning not just how they moved or spoke, but how they felt the gentle, indispensable rhythm of waking and resting, a rhythm that, despite the millennia between us, still resonates, subtly guiding the human experience of comfort, of anticipation, and of the delicate art of taking moments for oneself, even in a world so different from our own. As the sun climbed higher over the rooftops of Athens, the city began to hum with a subtle yet persistent energy, not overwhelming, but insistent, like the faint pulse of a living organism awakening from a long slumber. In a modest home nestled along a narrow street, the morning unfolded slowly, each motion deliberate, steeped in a gentle rhythm that balanced necessity with small pleasures. The father of the household, a man whose robes were simple yet carefully kept, rose first, stretching his arms and letting the warm sunlight brush against his face, the golden light illuminating the faint dust motes suspended in the air. Nearby, his children slowly emerged from their slumber, rubbing their eyes, exchanging sleepy greetings, their small feet patting softly against the cool stone floor, careful not to disturb the delicate balance of quiet that seemed to hold the household together in these early hours. Outside, the marketplace's distant murmur grew louder, a soft crescendo of voices and laughter, the clatter of ceramic vessels, and the occasional bray of a donkey carrying baskets of fresh fruit and vegetables, all forming an auditory backdrop that contrasted pleasantly with the measured calm indoors. The mother, moving with a kind of practiced grace, lit a small oil lamp even as daylight filled the room, a ritual that combined function with subtle comfort, the gentle flicker of flame casting dancing shadows across the walls. She carried a shallow bowl of water infused with a few sprigs of mint and lavender, and with a delicate cloth, she washed her hands and face, the scent of herbs mixing with the natural warmth of the morning, producing a sensation both refreshing and quietly invigorating. She spoke softly to the children as they gathered around the low table, handing each a portion of bread and a few dried figs, occasionally offering a small piece of cheese. And while the meal was simple, the act of sharing it brought a sense of calm and connection, a moment of restful attention that anchored the household in a gentle domestic rhythm. Meanwhile, the servants, moving like shadows, performed their tasks with quiet precision. One arranged cushions on the wooden chairs near the window, anticipating a brief moment of relaxation later in the morning, while another swept the floors, the soft brush creating patterns that traced the edges of the room almost like an invisible meditation. Occasionally, a small bird perched on the windowsill would be startled by movement, flapping its wings lightly before settling again, a minor yet comforting interruption in the otherwise measured motions of domestic life. The father prepared for his journey to the agora, adjusting the folds of his robe and tucking a small satchel under his arm, in it a few coins and a thin scroll or two, perhaps containing notes or small observations from prior days, reflecting the thoughtful habits of a man who valued reflection as much as action. Even in these ordinary routines, moments of leisure intertwined seamlessly with necessity. The children, after finishing their modest breakfast, would sometimes linger by the window, tracing shapes in the condensation of early morning dew, or tossing tiny pebbles into a shallow basin of water, fascinated by the ripples that spread outward, teaching themselves patience and observation in ways unnoticed by the busyness of grown-ups. In the shadows of the street, neighbors might nod greetings to each other, exchanging news in a hushed murmur, a fragment of gossip here, a remark about the weather there, each small interaction contributing to the subtle communal rhythm that defined life in these tight-knit city quarters. And yet, even as the city awakened fully, there remained spaces for quiet reflection. A servant might pause by a small oil lamp in a corner, inhaling the aroma of the burning oil while thinking briefly of distant family, or a child might tug gently at a parent's sleeve to show a newfound discovery. A smooth stone, an unusually shaped leaf, a tiny insect crawling with careful deliberation, moments of curiosity and wonder tucked neatly into the fabric of daily existence. Outside, The soft breeze carried scents of fresh bread baking in communal ovens, mingling with the earthy fragrance of the streets, and in the distance, a temple bell would chime softly, a reminder of rituals and divine observances, but also a gentle punctuation in the otherwise unhurried pace of life, a marker for reflection, preparation, and the small joys of an ordinary Greek morning. By the time the sun reached a higher arc, the household, now fully awake, had settled into its rhythm. A balance of labor, care, and attention to detail, of preparation for the tasks ahead, but also a respect for the subtleties of comfort. The smoothness of linen under fingertips, the warmth of a shallow pool of sunlight on the floor, the quiet murmur of conversation punctuated by laughter and small exclamations. It was in these moments, often overlooked by modern observers, that the Greeks cultivated a sense of equilibrium, a gentle harmony between action and rest, where even the simplest gestures, pouring a cup of water, arranging a cushion, adjusting a small lamp, carried with them a measure of thoughtfulness and ease, laying the foundation for the more structured moments of leisure, reflection, and sleep that would follow later in the day, moments in which the ordinary and the extraordinary merged, quietly, like sunlight on stone, or the soft rustle of leaves outside a window. As the morning progressed, attention slowly shifted from the quiet rituals of awakening toward the more deliberate and intimate practices of personal care, which in ancient Greece were considered essential not only for cleanliness but also for comfort, relaxation, and even social standing. In a small courtyard open to the sun, a modest basin of water awaited, filled from the nearby clay jar, and already the scent of lavender and rosemary infused the air, mingling with the faint aroma of sun-warmed stone. The father of the household stepped toward the basin, dipping his hands carefully into the cool liquid, and with gentle, deliberate movements began to wash his face, letting the water trickle along the contours of his jaw and down his neck, the cool sensation both soothing and invigorating, almost like a silent meditation. As he massaged small amounts of olive oil into his skin afterward, he could feel the subtle smoothness it left behind, a tactile comfort that lingered as he went about the rest of his morning tasks, a ritual that linked cleanliness to a calm, attentive mind. Meanwhile, the children, encouraged by their mother, were learning their own methods of washing, using small, soft cloths to wipe away traces of sleep, while trying not to spill the precious water that had been drawn so carefully from the jar. They giggled quietly when one of them dropped a tiny sprig of lavender into the basin, sending ripples across the water, their amusement mixing with the faint, aromatic fragrance that had now settled across the courtyard. These small, almost playful acts were not just about cleanliness but also about learning patience, observation, and the art of gentle, mindful motion, a kind of early lesson in the harmony between body and environment. For the women of the household, this time was equally intentional, though approached with a slightly different rhythm and purpose. They arranged their hair with delicate combs, untangling each strand slowly while inhaling the faint aromas of scented oils, considering which blends would best complement their skin and mood for the day ahead. Some applied small amounts of perfumed ointments, a practice believed to calm the mind and invite relaxation, while also signaling a readiness to face the outside world with grace and composure. Conversations flowed softly as they moved through these tasks, often sharing advice about herbs or small remedies, or recounting the whispers and rumors that had circulated through the neighborhood. Stories about which merchant had arrived with particularly fine figs, or who had been seen lingering near the temple steps the day before. These shared observations, seemingly trivial, carried weight in the social fabric of Greek daily life, linking small domestic acts to a broader sense of community and awareness. The servants, skilled in these routines, often assisted with both preparation and cleanup, their movements precise, almost invisible, maintaining the serene atmosphere while ensuring that each element, the smooth cloths, the warmed oils, the fresh water, was in its proper place. Occasionally, a cat would slink through the courtyard, curious about the motion and the scent, brushing against ankles and adding a quiet, comforting presence to the scene. Birds perched on the edges of the roof called softly to one another, their chirping harmonizing with the distant hum of the city, and even these natural sounds were absorbed into the unhurried cadence of morning. In wealthier homes, small tubs might have been used, filled with water warmed over a simple hearth, allowing for a longer, more luxurious soak. There, people could recline briefly, massaging their muscles and letting the warmth ease any lingering stiffness from sleep. A private moment of indulgence that complemented the morning's rising energy with a gentle, restorative pause. Discussions often accompanied these soaks, whether about upcoming market trips, philosophical musings overheard at public gatherings, or the playful teasing of a servant who had misplaced a tool or towel. Small, human moments that reminded all present that even amidst ritual and order, humor and imperfection had their place. These morning ablutions were more than mere practicality. They were a form of gentle preparation for both the mind and body, a conscious cultivation of ease and alertness that persisted throughout the day. As the water was drained and the basins rinsed, the household transitioned seamlessly into the next phase of their day, arranging themselves for work, study, or leisure, while carrying the calm, reflective sense nurtured in these moments. Even the smallest gestures, the tilt of a head under a comb, the careful patting of oil onto the skin, the faint scent left behind on a hand, echoed through the rhythms of the day, reminding all that comfort, mindfulness, and subtle pleasure were deeply woven into the ordinary fabric of Greek life, shaping not only how they looked and felt, but how they approached the activities, conversations, and minor adventures that awaited them beyond the courtyard walls. By mid-morning, the city of Athens had fully awakened, and the streets were gradually filling with a mix of purposeful steps and casual wanderers, each moving according to their own rhythm, as if the very stones themselves remembered the pace of generations past. Merchants arranged their wares with meticulous care, stacking pottery, displaying vibrant fabrics dyed with deep reds, blues, and yellows, and placing fresh fruits in carefully balanced pyramids, all with the quiet awareness that attention to detail not only attracted customers but reflected personal pride and respect for the city itself. The air was a mosaic of scents. The sweetness of ripe figs mingled with the faint tang of cured fish, the aroma of baking bread drifting lazily from ovens tucked between narrow alleys, and the earthy smell of recently turned soil from nearby gardens where herbs and vegetables thrived under the gentle sun. As people went about their business, they naturally incorporated moments of rest into the day, often in subtle ways unnoticed by the casual observer. A potter might pause for a few quiet breaths, resting his arms on the edge of his workbench, letting his eyes wander across the street to the neighboring stall, observing the interplay of movement, sound, and color, almost meditative in its simplicity. A merchant, noticing the sun growing warmer, would step into a shaded doorway, sipping water from a small clay cup while exchanging brief, hushed greetings with passers-by, and perhaps a small bit of gossip, such as who had arrived in the agora with a rare olive oil or who had witnessed a particularly curious incident at the docks the day before. These moments, fleeting yet intentional, provided a necessary balance between labor and relaxation, ensuring that the body and mind remained engaged but not exhausted. Children, still brimming with energy from the morning, found themselves moving freely through the streets, their laughter a gentle counterpoint to the more deliberate steps of adults. They played simple games with pebbles, sticks, or improvised hoops, sometimes imitating the trades and actions of grown-ups in miniature, transforming everyday tools and objects into instruments of imagination. Their small movements, full of curiosity and spontaneity, became a subtle reminder of the balance between work and leisure, and how even in public spaces, moments of joy, exploration, and learning were woven seamlessly into the fabric of daily life. Women who had completed their morning routines might step outside to collect water from public fountains or to carry small baskets of herbs and food, moving gracefully and efficiently, yet taking the time to pause in shaded corners, exchanging soft-spoken words and local news with neighbors. The rhythm of their steps, combined with the light sway of their garments, created a quiet poetry in motion, illustrating how rest and activity coexisted in a continuous, unhurried dance. A moment spent observing a small bird nesting in a nearby olive tree, or listening to the faint clatter of a cart moving along cobbled streets, became as restorative as any pause indoors, a subtle replenishment of the senses and spirit. Even the city's animals contributed to the rhythm of rest and activity. Goats tethered near doorways chewed slowly on fresh clover, occasionally looking up at passers-by with mild curiosity, while dogs padded along behind their owners, noses close to the ground, tails swishing in measured contentment. Birds called from rooftops and small courtyards, their song interlacing with the sounds of human endeavor, creating an unintentional symphony that both energized and soothed those moving through the streets. In a sense, the city itself seemed to breathe with these alternating cycles of work, observation, and brief pauses, as if Athens had learned over centuries to embrace the value of measured rest as part of the daily experience. Even at the height of activity, small courtyards and shaded nooks provided quiet refuge. A craftsman might stretch out briefly on a low bench, letting the sun warm his back while listening to the distant echoes of conversation, the faint clinking of metal, or the soft murmur of flowing water. A young boy, carrying a bundle of herbs for his mother, might pause to toss a stone into a shallow fountain, watching the ripples expand outward, a tiny meditation on cause and effect, on the calm interwoven into movement. And while each of these instances might seem inconsequential alone, together they formed an intricate tapestry of human life, a seamless intertwining of work, play, and repose that defined not just the practicalities of daily existence, but the subtle, deliberate art of resting in motion, of finding calm amid the rhythm of a waking city, an art that would continue to shape the lives of all who called Athens home as the day unfolded toward noon and the inevitable moments of midday respite. While the adults moved about their errands and work with careful attention, the children of Athens carved out their own world of quiet exploration and play, a realm where the rhythms of rest and discovery intertwined effortlessly. In narrow streets shaded by overhanging balconies, boys and girls gathered in small clusters, improvising games with pebbles, sticks, or scraps of pottery that might otherwise have been discarded. The rules were simple and often fleeting, invented and abandoned in the span of a few minutes. Yet each game carried its own subtle lessons about balance, patience, and observation, and in this way, the act of play itself became a gentle preparation for both mind and body. Laughter, soft but persistent, bubbled through the alleyways, mingling with the more measured sounds of commerce, offering a quiet counterpoint to the day's labor. Some children played a version of a hoop game, rolling wooden circles along the stone-paved streets with sticks, chasing them with small shouts of encouragement and triumph. Occasionally, a hoop would strike a stray pebble, sending it skittering unpredictably, prompting delighted squeals as they scrambled after it, their small feet echoing softly on the worn stone. In a nearby courtyard, a group of girls arranged lines of pebbles and leaves, constructing intricate patterns and paths, pretending they were miniature cities, imitating the markets, temples, and homes they had observed in the larger streets, their imaginations converting mundane objects into entire worlds. These moments were not mere amusement. They were gentle exercises in planning, observation, and creative thinking, a form of early engagement with the rhythms of human life, and a subtle cultivation of patience as they learned to adjust their constructions after a sudden breeze or an accidental nudge. Even the youngest children, too small for games that required coordination or strategy, found quiet joys in tactile exploration. They collected small leaves, tracing the delicate veins with careful fingers, or watched ants march in intricate lines across the dusty ground, marveling at their persistence and coordination. Occasionally, a curious cat would weave among them, tail flicking with interest, adding an element of gentle unpredictability to their activities. Parents, observing from a distance, would smile quietly, understanding that these unstructured periods of play were just as important to growth as the more formal routines of study or work. The children themselves, absorbed in their discoveries, often seemed unaware of the passage of time, a natural reflection of their engagement and the subtle sense of ease that came from being allowed to move and imagine freely. Some families who lived near the Agora, Athens' central marketplace, allowed their children to walk short distances under watchful eyes, observing the bustle while maintaining a safe detachment from the heavier currents of trade and negotiation. In these moments, children learned the rhythms of public life almost by osmosis. How merchants greeted one another, how coins exchanged hands with quiet ceremony, how the aroma of freshly baked bread or roasting fish could signal both sustenance and social connection. These observations, combined with periods of imaginative play, helped children develop a nuanced understanding of the balance between activity and rest, between observation and participation, a harmony reflected in the soft cadence of their laughter and the gentle rhythm of their footsteps echoing in the streets. Even indoors, children were encouraged to rest and recharge at intervals, sometimes lying on woven mats in a cool corner, hands clasped behind their heads, eyes tracing the slow movement of sunlight across walls or ceilings. Others might engage in quieter pastimes, drawing shapes in soft clay, arranging small figurines, or quietly repeating the motions they had seen their elders perform, whether tending to small domestic tasks or handling simple tools. These moments, though seemingly trivial, were imbued with subtle lessons: patience, attention to detail, and the gentle satisfaction of completing a task or discovering a small wonder. And as the morning gradually edged into the warmer hours, these quiet interludes of play and observation seamlessly transitioned into the next phase of the day, where both children and adults would seek nourishment, refreshment, and perhaps a brief, restorative pause, a continuation of the ongoing rhythm of work, rest, and gentle curiosity that defined life in ancient Athens. As the sun climbed toward its zenith, the women of the household turned their attention to the more deliberate rhythms of the day, blending practical tasks with moments of quiet reflection and personal care. In the airy spaces near open windows, gentle light spilled across woven mats and low tables, illuminating the subtle textures of garments, pottery, and small vessels filled with fragrant oils and crushed herbs. Women moved gracefully through these spaces, attending not only to the upkeep of the household, but also to the rituals that allowed them a measure of comfort and calm. One might untangle her hair with a finely carved comb, each stroke deliberate and measured, while inhaling the faint scent of rosemary and myrtle, a combination thought to invigorate the mind while soothing tension. These moments, though seemingly simple, were small acts of meditation, pauses in which attention to body and spirit intertwined seamlessly. Soft conversation flowed naturally between women, often in low tones that carried the rhythm of familiarity and shared experience. They exchanged advice on which oils softened the skin most effectively, which fragrances were best suited to particular times of day, and which herbs might be infused in warm water to refresh weary hands and faces. Sometimes, they spoke of events in neighboring homes or markets, of what a friend had observed, or a merchant who had arrived with particularly fine cloth, weaving mundane news into the tapestry of daily life. These exchanges, subtle and nuanced, reinforced the social bonds of the household, providing both mental stimulation and gentle amusement. A quiet form of entertainment that required no spectacle beyond the shared presence of companions. As they moved from one task to another, arranging cushions, folding garments, polishing small vessels, the tactile motions themselves seemed to carry a restorative quality. Fingers brushed over smooth surfaces, lifted soft fabrics, or traced the delicate edges of painted pottery, all acts that, while practical in function, also offered quiet moments of satisfaction and sensory pleasure. Occasionally, a servant might approach with a small tray of water scented with lavender or rose, allowing a brief pause to refresh hands or cool the forehead, the subtle scents mingling with the warmth of sunlight and the gentle rhythm of movement in the room. Even mundane tasks, sweeping, dusting, or preparing food, were approached with an awareness of grace, attention, and the small comforts that transformed necessary labor into a quiet, restorative practice. Some women took these rituals further, arranging small bowls of fragrant oils for massage, carefully applying them to the neck, shoulders, and wrists, watching the soft sheen form across the skin in the light, and feeling the subtle warmth and relaxation spread through the body. Others might sit quietly with a small child, teaching gentle movements or soft songs, creating a shared sense of calm and attention that extended beyond individual practice into the household's collective rhythm. In these moments, laughter, curiosity, and quiet reflection coexisted, a balance of movement and pause that allowed each person to nurture both body and mind without distraction. Even meals, often simple in composition, bread, olives, dried fruits, and small servings of cheese, became moments of communal reflection and gentle conversation. As women gathered around low tables or mats, arranging the food with care, they might recount small stories or share quiet humor about daily mishaps, infusing ordinary sustenance with social nourishment and mental ease. The act of eating together, punctuated by attentive pauses and subtle gestures of care, reinforced a sense of connection and well-being, a reminder that rest was not only a matter of sleeping or reclining, but could be woven into every movement and interaction throughout the day. By late morning, the household had settled into a rhythm defined as much by intention and awareness as by action. The women's routines, though outwardly practical, were deeply interlaced with moments of introspection, sensory engagement, and social harmony, establishing a cadence that would carry them through the day's labor, play, and eventual preparation for evening rest. In the interplay of tasks, conversation, and small rituals of care, there existed a quiet artistry, a subtle cultivation of ease and satisfaction, ensuring that even the most ordinary moments, combing hair, arranging cushions, exchanging observations, were imbued with a gentle grace, a reflection of how intimately daily life, personal attention, and relaxation were intertwined in ancient Greek culture. As the sun reached its peak, casting golden light across rooftops and courtyards, the household naturally moved toward a quieter period, a time for nourishment and gentle repose. The midday meal, though often modest in comparison to later feasts, held a central place in the rhythm of the day, providing both sustenance and a moment of collective pause. Low tables were set with small portions of bread, olives, figs, and occasionally fish or lightly roasted vegetables, arranged with care not only for practicality but also for visual harmony, the Greeks appreciating the subtle beauty in even the simplest presentations. The act of sharing this meal was deliberate, allowing each person to slow their movements, savor each bite, and engage in soft conversation, a calm interlude that contrasted pleasantly with the activity of the morning. Servants moved quietly, filling small cups with water or diluted wine, ensuring that each member of the household had what they needed while maintaining a hushed atmosphere conducive to rest. The father, having returned briefly from the agora or a nearby meeting, might recline on a low couch, leaning back against cushions as he chewed slowly, enjoying the combination of flavors and the soft warmth of sunlight upon his face. Women tended to small dishes and utensils with careful attention, ensuring that the meal proceeded smoothly while also creating an opportunity to pause themselves, appreciating the gentle rhythm of preparation and presentation. Children, having played vigorously during the morning, gathered around the table with slightly rumpled clothing and flushed cheeks, their laughter subdued in deference to the quieter tone, but their curiosity and energy still evident in the careful way they observed the meals being set before them. After the meal, the household transitioned naturally into a period of light repose, an interlude that allowed bodies to digest and minds to rest. Mats and cushions were arranged in shaded areas, where the air remained cool despite the heat of the sun, and individuals reclined in various positions, some lying flat with eyes closed, others propped on elbows or leaning against walls, observing the subtle movements of sunlight across the courtyard floor. These periods were unhurried, marked by occasional quiet conversation, gentle laughter, or the soft observation of everyday life. Birds hopping along ledges, a neighbor passing with a basket of laundry, the distant clatter of cartwheels over cobbled streets. Even in these moments of apparent inactivity, subtle learning and awareness persisted, with children watching the measured gestures of adults, absorbing social cues, and developing an early understanding of timing, patience, and the unspoken rules of communal spaces. The scent of herbs, freshly drawn water, and sun-warmed stone mingled to create a calming atmosphere, almost a silent lullaby for those reclining in the shaded areas. Some might engage in private moments of reflection, considering plans for the afternoon, pondering philosophical questions overheard in the agora, or simply enjoying the gentle rhythm of breathing and subtle movement around them. Servants maintained their tasks in the background, cleaning small areas, attending to the needs of family members, or quietly preparing materials for afternoon activities, their presence largely unnoticed but subtly reinforcing the sense of order and comfort. These brief periods of repose were not idle. They were carefully integrated into the daily structure as moments to restore energy, ease minor aches from morning labor, and create mental space for observation and reflection. The Greeks understood the value of these intervals, recognizing that rest was not merely a withdrawal from activity but an active cultivation of well-being, a subtle preparation for the continued movement and engagement of the day. And as the sun shifted westward, stretching shadows across the courtyard, the household began to awaken gently from this pause, bodies eased and spirits quietly replenished, ready to engage with the tasks, social interactions, and minor adventures that awaited in the unfolding hours, all while maintaining the rhythm of measured attention to comfort, awareness, and subtle pleasure that defined their daily lives. As the afternoon sun began its gentle descent, casting long, warm shadows across the stone-paved streets of Athens, the household gradually emerged from the quiet repose of midday, moving toward a slower, more deliberate engagement with the world outside. Women carried small baskets, often filled with herbs, bread, or lightly roasted vegetables, stepping carefully through narrow lanes while pausing to exchange quiet greetings with neighbors, or to observe the subtle activity of nearby shops and stalls. Men might stroll toward the agora, not for urgent business, but to observe the exchange of goods, to note the movement of people, or simply to feel the warmth of the sun on their shoulders and the breeze against their faces, a gentle, restorative engagement with the city. Children, released from the confines of indoor spaces, ran along the streets with measured exuberance, their laughter echoing softly against the walls of adjacent homes. Some chased small wooden hoops, rolling them along uneven stones, while others improvised games with sticks or pebbles, inventing rules as they went, creating fleeting worlds of imagination in which the mundane streets became rivers, marketplaces, or secret fortresses. Even as they played, moments of observation were woven in. A stray cat crossing a rooftop, the distant flutter of a bird's wings, the clatter of a merchant arranging his pottery. These small observations, absorbed almost unconsciously, were as much a part of their education as any formal instruction, teaching them patience, attention to detail, and the subtle rhythms of urban life. Neighbors often paused in their own tasks to watch or comment softly, exchanging brief bits of news, gentle laughter, or small advice. Perhaps a woman remarked on the quality of a basket's weave, or a man noted the particularly plump figs just brought from a nearby orchard, all while gestures remained subtle, movements deliberate, and voices measured, ensuring that the atmosphere retained its calm, restful quality despite the underlying activity. These interactions, minor as they might appear, reinforced community bonds, weaving a quiet social fabric that allowed for observation, reflection, and shared experience within the seemingly ordinary flow of daily life. Along the edges of the streets, craftsmen and artisans continued their work in a slower, more reflective manner than during the bustling morning hours. Potters shaped clay with careful, measured movements, occasionally pausing to examine the texture or observe the light reflecting across the surface of their vessels. Weavers adjusted threads with deliberate care, feeling the tension and smoothness under their fingers, appreciating the subtle satisfaction of creating something both functional and aesthetically pleasing. Even as work continued, the unhurried pace ensured that moments of pause and quiet reflection were naturally integrated, allowing for a sense of calm and mindfulness that carried through the rest of the day. The air itself seemed imbued with tranquility, filled with the mixed scents of herbs, freshly baked bread, and sun-warmed stone. Birds perched in olive trees called softly to one another, their wings catching the sunlight in slow, deliberate flutters, while distant sounds of merchants closing minor transactions created a gentle, steady backdrop, a faint hum of life rather than a rush of activity. People walking the streets absorbed these sensory details, moving with awareness and taking in small, restorative experiences. The feel of sunlight on their skin, the smoothness of stone beneath their hands when they rested briefly, the soft rustle of leaves in a gentle breeze. Even brief encounters, helping a neighbor with a basket, exchanging a word about a recent event, observing a stray dog curiously sniffing along the street, were integrated into the calm rhythm of the afternoon. Life flowed quietly, a seamless mixture of engagement and reflection, activity and pause, allowing individuals to feel connected yet unhurried, alert yet relaxed. And as the sun continued its descent toward the horizon, lengthening shadows across rooftops and courtyards, the household's afternoon strolls and observations gently prepared everyone for the eventual shift toward evening, a transition marked by subtle movements, quiet reflections, and a continuing sense of balance between action and repose that defined their daily life in the ancient city. As the sun slowly edged closer to the horizon, painting the rooftops with warm hues of gold and amber, the household began its gentle transition into evening. Windows were opened wider to welcome the cooling breeze, allowing air to circulate through the stone rooms and courtyards, carrying with it the subtle scent of distant herbs, baked bread, and the faint saltiness from the nearby Athenian coast. Women moved deliberately through the home, arranging cushions, sweeping the floors, and setting small bowls with water or oil, not out of urgency but from a sense of graceful order, ensuring the household maintained its rhythm and comfort as shadows lengthened and the light softened. Children, their earlier exuberance tempered by the passage of the day, engaged in quieter forms of amusement. Some traced patterns in the sand of a small courtyard, arranging tiny pebbles or drawing shapes with sticks, while others sat with a parent or older sibling, listening attentively to soft stories or observing the careful motions of adults at work. The act of play had evolved into gentle observation, a slow absorption of subtle details, the way light shifted across walls, the delicate arrangement of a simple meal, the rhythmic movement of a hand combing hair or arranging a small stack of linens. In these moments, the household itself became a classroom of unhurried learning, teaching patience, awareness, and the understated art of noticing without needing to intervene. Men returned from their afternoon errands, some with small goods or curiosities acquired at the agora, others simply carrying the calm energy of a slow walk through the city. They joined the family in arranging simple meals for the early evening or in tidying the courtyard, their movements deliberate yet unhurried, complementing the soft rhythm already established. Occasionally, a brief discussion or quiet anecdote would punctuate the gentle motion, stories of minor incidents, small observations, or light humor shared without urgency or volume, maintaining the tranquil atmosphere while subtly connecting members of the household through narrative. In small corners of the home, faint lamps or oil burners were lit, casting a soft, flickering glow across walls and floors, providing warmth and visual comfort as the sun's rays waned. The aroma of burning oil mixed subtly with residual scents of herbs, baked goods, and sun-warmed stone, creating an environment that felt simultaneously grounded and gentle, encouraging both reflection and quiet social interaction. Women might adjust their garments, smoothing wrinkles and straightening folds, while children watched or participated in miniature imitations, learning decorum and careful movements through both observation and gentle practice. Even small tasks, like folding cloth or arranging pottery, were approached with mindfulness, each motion flowing into the next without haste, a choreography of calm that sustained both body and mind. Outside, the city itself seemed to soften under the amber light. Merchants closed their stalls quietly, carefully stacking wares and sweeping dust from counters. Neighbors exchanged brief evening greetings, their voices subdued in harmony with the gentle hush settling over the streets. Birds, having spent the day hopping between rooftops and trees, called softly one final time before retreating to nests or hidden perches. Dogs and goats, familiar with the cadence of human activity, moved with gentle deliberation, their own behaviors reflecting the subtle ebb of energy in the city. By the time the sun had fully descended, the household had completed its preparation for evening. Simple arrangements, gentle movement, and soft light combined to create a sense of restfulness and comfort, a quiet pause between the busyness of day and the calm of approaching night. Families gathered briefly for small meals or light conversation, children absorbing the nuanced world around them, while adults maintained the gentle rhythm of activity and care. Even these seemingly ordinary acts, adjusting a cushion, sharing a morsel of bread, observing a distant neighbor, were infused with intentionality and calm, reinforcing the understanding that rest, comfort, and reflection were as much a part of daily life as work or play, laying the foundation for the final phases of the day. relaxation, personal reflection, and the slow preparation for sleep. As twilight settled over Athens, painting the sky in soft shades of rose and violet, the household naturally shifted toward quieter pursuits, embracing the gentle intimacy of evening within the walls of their home. The fading sunlight filtered through open windows, casting long, delicate shadows across the floors and walls, and the subtle flicker of small oil lamps or clay lanterns added warmth and a sense of calm to each room. In these moments, the rhythm of life slowed, and attention turned inward, toward reflection, gentle conversation, and the comforting patterns of domestic routine that had been cultivated throughout the day. Women and men alike gathered in the central rooms or courtyards, sitting on cushions or low benches, sharing soft-spoken stories or reflections on the day's minor events. Children, now quieter after the energies of morning and afternoon, perched nearby or engaged in careful play with small clay figures or pebbles, observing adults' gestures and absorbing the subtle lessons of rhythm, decorum, and awareness. Occasionally, one of the older children might recite a short line from a familiar poem or retell a tale overheard from a passing philosopher in the agora, their voice measured and deliberate, contributing to the subdued, reflective tone of the household. Music, a gentle accompaniment to these moments, often emerged spontaneously. A woman might pluck a few notes on a small lyre, or tap a simple rhythm on a clay vessel, soft sounds mingling with the subtle hum of conversation and the occasional distant call from the streets outside. These quiet performances were not meant to entertain in the modern sense, but to foster calm, shared awareness, and emotional balance, inviting both participants and listeners to slow their breathing, attune to subtle harmonies, and let the mind settle into a reflective state. Even brief improvisations, a series of plucked strings or gentle percussion, created a small sense of ceremony, a reminder that ordinary moments could hold beauty, mindfulness, and connection without the need for grand gestures or spectacle. Small domestic tasks continued in parallel, but in a measured, almost meditative manner. Cushions were straightened, vessels arranged, and fabrics folded with careful attention to symmetry and aesthetic pleasure, each motion flowing smoothly into the next, allowing the participants to feel a quiet sense of accomplishment and order. Women might prepare simple fragrant mixtures, rubbing small amounts of oil into their hands or lightly dusting floors with scented powders, while men reflected on the day's events or offered subtle guidance to children in the art of attentive observation, patience, and careful movement. These rituals, though understated, reinforced a shared sense of harmony and continuity, emphasizing the deliberate cultivation of comfort, awareness, and minor pleasures within the home. Conversation, when it arose, was soft and deliberate, weaving together small observations, gentle humor, and minor stories from the neighborhood. Perhaps a neighbor's cat had been seen playfully chasing a bird along a tiled roof, or a merchant had arrived with particularly glossy olives that morning. Such seemingly trivial details provided both amusement and connection, subtly reminding everyone present of their place within a wider, attentive world. Even silence was meaningful, a shared, restful acknowledgement of the day's activities, allowing each person to reflect, observe, or simply enjoy the sensation of being present in a space suffused with calm, familiarity, and soft light. As the evening deepened, these quiet rituals gradually prepared the household for the final stages of the day. Children began to tire, their movements slowing as their attention shifted toward the subtle cues of bedtime. Adults, too, embraced the soft rhythms, concluding minor tasks, reflecting on daily experiences, and enjoying the lingering warmth and fragrance of the home. The combination of gentle music, subdued conversation, deliberate tasks, and mindful observation created a seamless transition from activity to rest, setting the stage for the approach of night, the slow preparation for sleep, and the continuation of the rhythms of comfort, awareness, and gentle pleasure that had defined their day from the very first light of morning. As the night deepened over Athens, the household settled into its most intimate and reflective hours, a time marked by quiet preparation for sleep and the soft closure of daily routines. Shadows stretched and merged in corners of rooms, cast by the flickering glow of small oil lamps and clay lanterns carefully positioned to provide both light and comfort without harshness. The air, still warm from the day's sun, carried lingering scents of herbs, fragrant oils, and the faint aroma of freshly baked bread, all blending into a gentle olfactory lullaby that signaled the approach of rest. Movement slowed naturally, each gesture deliberate and measured, as members of the household performed small rituals designed to soothe both body and mind. Women tended to the final tasks of the day with graceful patience, arranging mats and cushions for sleeping, ensuring that bedding was smooth and comfortable, and applying small amounts of scented oils to hands, arms, and temples. The fragrances, myrtle, rosemary, lavender, were selected not only for their pleasing aroma but also for their calming properties, believed to ease muscles and clear the mind. Gentle, careful strokes of hands along hair or fabric, soft smoothing of linens, and the quiet clinking of small vessels created a rhythm of sound and motion that was at once practical and meditative, encouraging a slow transition from wakefulness to the liminal space of pre-sleep reflection. Children, sensing the natural cues of the day's end, moved more slowly, their laughter subsiding into quiet murmurs, their games reduced to careful arrangements of pebbles or small toys, or the imitation of adult routines they had observed. Parents offered subtle guidance, not with urgency but through example, demonstrating how to fold a piece of cloth, arrange a mat, or place a small bowl for water within easy reach. These gentle teachings, carried out in whispers and soft gestures, reinforced a sense of calm, awareness, and routine, embedding in the youngest members a quiet understanding of the rhythms of rest and the subtle artistry of comfort. The men, too, embraced evening rituals. After a day of observation, commerce, or social interaction, they reclined on low benches or mats, sipping small cups of water or diluted wine, reflecting on the day's events in measured, introspective tones. Occasionally, a brief exchange of words occurred, recounting minor happenings or observations, yet even conversation was softened by the dim lighting and the overarching stillness of the night. Each person's movement, whether adjusting a cushion, smoothing a garment, or arranging small items, became an extension of calm thought, a tangible manifestation of the household's collective rhythm as the body prepared for sleep. Outside, the city had quieted considerably, the distant echoes of commerce and footsteps replaced by the faint whisper of a breeze through olive trees and the occasional bird settling in its nest. Dogs and goats, familiar with the day's pace, rested near their owners, their subtle presence reinforcing a sense of continuity and security. The interplay of natural sounds, subdued human activity, and soft light created a comforting environment in which both observation and gentle action coexisted, allowing the senses to gradually relax while the mind remained engaged in reflection and subtle awareness. As the household completed its final tasks, covering food, extinguishing stray flames, and smoothing mats for sleeping, the pervasive sense of calm became almost tangible, a quiet hum of settled energy that pervaded the rooms and courtyards. The night, infused with soft aromas, flickering light, and measured movement, encouraged eyes to grow heavy, muscles to loosen, and thoughts to drift naturally toward rest. In this delicate balance of action, reflection, and sensory immersion, the art of preparing for sleep was revealed not as a single moment, but as an extended, deliberate practice, a seamless continuation of the day's rhythms that ensured both body and mind were gently guided toward the restorative calm of night. As the household finally settled fully into night, the transition from wakefulness to sleep unfolded with a natural, unhurried rhythm, guided by habits and subtle attentiveness cultivated over years. Mats, woven from reeds or soft fibers, were carefully arranged on stone or clay floors, sometimes layered with thin blankets for warmth, their surfaces smoothed by practiced hands to ensure comfort. Cushions or low pillows supported heads and necks, elevated just enough to ease breathing, and bodies were positioned in gentle repose, often on the side or back, reflecting an intuitive understanding of natural posture, circulation, and comfort. Even in sleep, the Greeks approached rest with awareness, balancing the need for relaxation with the subtle attentiveness to body and environment that had characterized the entire day. Children, accustomed to the rhythms of household life, drifted off gradually, sometimes after softly recounting the day's minor adventures or whispering brief stories to one another. Their breath slowed and deepened as the mind unwound, the quiet repetition of daily routines providing a comforting anchor for imagination and reflection. Parents, too, allowed themselves these slow adjustments, shifting slightly to relieve tension, smoothing a blanket, or inhaling the lingering fragrance of oils and herbs that lined the room, their senses attuned to both comfort and subtle safety. The soft creak of mats, the occasional rustle of fabric, and the faint flicker of remaining lamps created a gentle sensory backdrop, reinforcing the slow descent into deeper, restorative sleep. Some members of the household practiced minor, almost imperceptible rituals even after lying down. A hand might brush across a small personal object, a token of affection, a piece of jewelry, or a carefully folded piece of cloth, its familiarity providing reassurance and a sense of continuity. Others adjusted the position of feet or arms, aligning themselves with instinctive comfort, while still mindful of the shared sleeping space, ensuring each person's movement maintained harmony within the household. These subtle adjustments, though seemingly trivial, reflected an intimate knowledge of the body, the environment, and the interdependence of individual and collective comfort in a domestic setting. Nighttime in Athens was punctuated by small, natural occurrences that were absorbed into the fabric of sleep rather than disrupting it. The distant call of an owl, a gentle wind brushing against the window, or the soft scratching of a small animal moving near the home were acknowledged with barely perceptible attention, then allowed to fade into the background, creating a sense of continuity between the household and the wider natural world. In some cases, the occasional minor movement, an infant stirring, a cat shifting in its corner, or the distant footsteps of a returning neighbor, prompted quiet adjustments but rarely broke the overarching rhythm of rest, for these interruptions were themselves part of the carefully observed and accepted patterns of daily life. Sleep was thus experienced as a dynamic, responsive state, shaped by subtle awareness, habit, and attentiveness rather than mere unconscious surrender. Individuals became attuned to the natural ebb and flow of breath, the gentle settling of muscles, and the soft interplay of environmental sounds, integrating these sensations into a seamless practice of rest. The Greeks recognized that the quality of sleep depended not solely on the absence of activity, but on the presence of comfort, safety, and sensory harmony, and they cultivated these conditions meticulously. As the household rested under the gentle glow of night, the collective rhythm of the day, its work, play, observation, and reflection, culminated in this restorative interlude, ensuring that body, mind, and spirit were quietly renewed for the next day's unfolding. As the first pale rays of dawn crept across the rooftops of Athens, filtering softly through open windows and casting a gentle glow upon mats and cushions, the household gradually stirred from its night-long repose. The air was cool and crisp, carrying subtle hints of dew, sun-warmed stone, and the faint fragrance of herbs left from the previous evening. Slowly, bodies adjusted, stretching limbs carefully to relieve stiffness and awaken muscles, hands smoothing hair or brushing lightly against bedding. All movements deliberate yet infused with the languid grace of a household that had long cultivated attentiveness to both body and environment. Children, sensing the subtle changes in light and sound, began to wake with small movements, fingers tracing patterns in the folds of cloth, tiny feet stretching beneath mats, and soft murmurs exchanged with siblings or nearby adults. Even in these initial moments, observation played a role. The youngest members noted the shifting shadows, the faint rustle of leaves outside, or the distant crowing of roosters from neighboring homes, absorbing sensory information that seamlessly blended with the familiar comfort of the household. Parents too awoke gradually, adjusting cushions, rising quietly, and attending first to small personal rituals, washing hands and face with cool water, inhaling the morning air, and occasionally applying a touch of fragrant oil to invigorate the senses before the day's activity began. Morning in the household was marked by measured, gentle routines rather than hurried movement. Women often began with simple preparations, gathering water, tending to small domestic tasks, and arranging mats or baskets in anticipation of the day's work. Men might step outside briefly to observe the streets and rooftops, noting the subtle change in light, the soft stirrings of early vendors, and the gentle movements of animals awakening alongside the city's inhabitants. These quiet observations were integrated into the day's unfolding rhythm, allowing the household to move from rest to activity with a sense of continuity, mindfulness, and calm energy. Children were gently guided through their morning routines with patience and observation. Some gathered small objects for play, imitating tasks they had seen adults perform. Others assisted in light chores, carrying small baskets of fruit, helping to fetch water, or arranging simple mats in the courtyard. These activities were approached with an unhurried attention that encouraged both learning and reflection, teaching the balance between engagement and awareness that characterized daily life in Athens. Even small gestures, such as carefully arranging pebbles or adjusting a mat, became exercises in attentiveness, patience, and subtle artistry, reinforcing the connection between body, mind, and environment. Breakfast, often modest, followed soon after awakening, consisting of bread, olives, fruits, or cheese, accompanied by small cups of water or diluted wine for adults. The preparation and sharing of this meal were deliberate acts, designed to nourish both body and spirit while preserving the tranquil atmosphere of early morning. Conversation was soft, gestures measured, and the interplay of light, aroma, and subtle motion created an environment of calm attentiveness. Even the simplest actions, slicing bread, pouring water, arranging food on small plates, were executed with care, transforming ordinary sustenance into a gentle ritual that set the tone for the rest of the day. As the sun climbed higher, dispersing lingering shadows and warming stone surfaces, the household's morning unfolded with a rhythm of observation, preparation, and gentle engagement with the world. Each movement, each sensory experience, and each social interaction was woven into a continuous flow that linked the restorative qualities of sleep with the gradual awakening of activity, establishing a balance of mindfulness, comfort, and subtle enjoyment that carried through all subsequent hours. In this way, the art of morning, like every other period of the day, was both practical and reflective, a carefully nurtured practice in which attention, sensory harmony, and the seamless integration of routine and observation ensured the household's smooth passage from rest to action. As the city of Athens came fully alive, bathed in the soft clarity of morning light, the adults of the household prepared to engage with the bustling rhythm beyond their home. Men, having completed their brief morning reflections and personal rituals, stepped into the streets with measured ease, observing the quiet stirrings of neighbors, the first merchants arranging their goods, and the distant clatter of carts over cobblestones. Even minor details, the way sunlight glinted off a clay roof tile or the subtle aroma of fresh bread from a nearby bakery, were noticed with attention, for the Greeks valued a measured awareness of their surroundings, integrating observation seamlessly into every movement. Women, meanwhile, prepared for errands or visits, organizing small baskets of goods, herbs, or textiles, and ensuring that household items were in order before leaving. Their steps were purposeful yet unhurried, a graceful balance of efficiency and attentiveness. As they moved through narrow lanes toward the market or nearby courtyards, they exchanged soft greetings with neighbors and passers-by, commenting briefly on the quality of a woven basket, the appearance of fresh figs, or the subtle changes in weather that morning. These small interactions, though seemingly mundane, wove a social fabric of connection, mutual observation, and shared daily knowledge, creating a network of awareness and subtle communication that enhanced both social cohesion and individual understanding of the neighborhood. The agora, central to civic life, slowly filled with a gentle, measured activity. Merchants arranged goods with care, displaying pottery, textiles, fresh produce, and small crafted items in aesthetically pleasing ways that drew attention without haste or excess. Buyers moved among the stalls deliberately, inspecting items with attentive fingers, inhaling the fragrances of fresh herbs or baked bread, and engaging in soft, respectful negotiation. Adults from the household participated in this exchange with the same combination of practicality and mindfulness, selecting goods not merely for immediate need but appreciating craftsmanship, quality, and subtle sensory details, allowing even a routine purchase to become an exercise in observation, taste, and quiet discernment. Social interactions unfolded in understated yet meaningful ways. A brief nod, a soft-spoken greeting, or an exchange of minor news created connections that reinforced trust and familiarity. Perhaps a neighbor mentioned the arrival of a merchant from a distant town, a particularly fine weaving of cloth, or a local rumor of minor political shifts. These small communications, shared in hushed tones, punctuated the marketplace's gentle rhythm, allowing for awareness, engagement, and reflection within a calm, controlled environment. Even disagreements, when they arose, were subtle and measured, with attention given to tone, posture, and the social context, ensuring that tension never overwhelmed the gentle cadence of the morning. Throughout the household, attention to detail persisted. Adults noted small changes in fruit ripeness, the texture of textiles, or the subtle variations in color and scent of herbs and oils, integrating sensory perception with practical decision-making. Tasks were approached deliberately. Water was fetched in measured amounts, baskets were arranged for balance, and items were handled with care to prevent unnecessary wear or damage. Each step, though practical, carried a quiet mindfulness, reinforcing the ongoing interplay between observation, action, and reflection that defined daily life. By mid-morning, the household's engagement with the city, the market, and social networks had established a rhythm of calm productivity. Movement, observation, and interaction intertwined seamlessly, creating a sense of purpose without urgency, awareness without stress, and subtle pleasure in every minor task. This balance between action and reflection, practicality, and mindfulness define the essence of daily life in Athens, preparing the household for the unfolding day while preserving the gentle continuity of comfort, attentiveness, and quiet satisfaction cultivated from dawn onward. As the morning gradually gave way to the warmth of midday, the household naturally shifted toward a slower pace, preparing for the central meal of the day and the gentle pause that accompanied it. Tables were arranged in shaded courtyards or sunlit rooms, low enough to encourage reclining or sitting comfortably on cushions. Bread, olives, small portions of cheese, and occasionally lightly grilled fish or roasted vegetables were carefully set upon simple platters, each item placed with attention not only to practicality but also to visual harmony, reflecting the Greek appreciation for subtle beauty even in modest fare. Water and diluted wine were poured into small cups, the cool liquid offering both refreshment and a sense of calm in the soft, golden light of noon. The family gathered slowly, exchanging quiet greetings and gentle smiles. Conversation was soft and deliberate, punctuated by the occasional laugh at a child's amusing observation or a minor anecdote from the morning. Children were encouraged to sit attentively, observing both the arrangement of food and the manner in which adults engaged with it, learning through quiet reflection as well as participation. The act of sharing this meal was both practical and social, reinforcing familial bonds, cultivating manners, and providing a natural interval of rest and contemplation within the flow of daily life. After the meal, a period of light repose unfolded, a gentle transition from the activity of morning to the more reflective part of the day. Mats and cushions were arranged in shaded corners or cool rooms, allowing individuals to recline comfortably while remaining aware of their surroundings. Adults closed their eyes briefly, stretched limbs slowly, or leaned back against cushions, their senses attuned to the subtle rhythms of the household. The soft rustle of leaves in a nearby tree, the distant murmur of neighbors' voices, or the gentle shifting of shadows across stone floors. Children, now quieter after the meal, engaged in subdued play or brief observation, watching adults' measured gestures, listening to faint conversation, or simply allowing their minds to wander within the safe confines of home. Small domestic activities continued in the background, though at a pace designed to maintain tranquility rather than demand attention. Women might sweep lightly, arrange utensils, or fold cloth, while men adjusted cushions or small items in preparation for later tasks. Even these seemingly mundane motions were carried out with care, transforming ordinary chores into exercises in mindfulness, attentiveness, and aesthetic appreciation. The household's environment, filled with the soft scents of herbs, warmed stone, and lingering food aromas, created a sense of sensory harmony that encouraged calm observation, reflective thought, and gentle relaxation. During this interval, conversation occasionally drifted toward minor stories, observations from the city, or light commentary on neighbors' activities. Perhaps a passing merchant had brought particularly ripe fruit, or a neighbor's pet displayed a new trick. These small details, shared softly, enriched the atmosphere without breaking its calm, contributing to a gentle rhythm of attention, learning, and subtle amusement. The combination of nourishment, repose, and understated social interaction allowed both body and mind to recover from the morning's activities, reinforcing a sense of balance, comfort, and continuity that characterized daily life in Athens. As shadows shifted slowly across the courtyard and sunlight warmed stone surfaces, the household gradually began to emerge from this restful interlude, preparing for the next phase of the day: movement, observation, and engagement with the wider world, yet carrying forward the calm attentiveness cultivated through meal, rest, and reflection. In this way, The simple act of eating and pausing for repose became not merely a routine, but an integrated practice in harmony, sensory awareness, and quiet social cohesion, laying the foundation for the unfolding hours to come.